This nightmare began in the summer of 2024. A 24-year-old law student named Catherine was back in her hometown, trying to decompress after a brutal first year at NYU. One Saturday night, she and her close friend, Jackie, went to a popular local bar, the kind of place that's always packed, loud, and sticky with spilled drinks. Catherine admits she sometimes plays a ditzy persona at bars just to see how men react, feigning ignorance to test their intentions. That night, two men approached them, Sebastian and Luke. On the surface, they were charming, decent-looking, and confident without being outwardly creepy. Jackie hit it off immediately with Luke, and the group talked for a long time. Eventually, Jackie pulled Catherine aside to the bathroom and dropped a bombshell. She felt a real connection with Luke and wanted to go home with him that night. Catherine was skeptical, but agreed to support her friend's decision. When they walked back from the bathroom, the atmosphere shifted instantly. From across the bar, Catherine saw Sebastian and Luke standing where they had left them, but their demeanor had changed. They weren't laughing anymore. They were whispering intensely, with blank, almost calculating expressions. However, the moment they spotted the girls returning, they snapped back into their charming personas. Luke slid 2 drinks toward the girls. "We got you these," he said. Catherine looked down. There were 4 drinks on the table. 2 were standard rum and cokes, dark and simple. The other 2 were bright yellow slushy frozen drinks that looked like piña coladas. It struck Catherine as odd that these men would order fruity frozen cocktails for themselves while buying simple mixed drinks for the girls. Her instincts flared. Putting on her playful, ditzy persona, she pointed at the frozen drinks. "You know," she teased, "I think those drinks might be a little too girly for you guys. I'd hate for anyone to catch you sipping them." Before they could protest, she boldly slid the rum and cokes across the table toward the men and pulled the 2 yellow frozen drinks toward herself and Jackie. She took a sip and winked at Sebastian. He stared at her with narrowed eyes, a look of cold calculation, before forcing a smile and saying, "Touché." He and Luke then drank the rum and cokes. Seeing them drink the mixers put Catherine at ease, assuming she had just been paranoid. They eventually left the bar and took an Uber to Luke's apartment for a nightcap. The apartment was on the 2nd floor, and Catherine noted it was weirdly minimal, clean but lacking personality, almost like a staged unit or a temporary rental. They had been there for less than 20 minutes when the night took a terrifying turn. The men, who had seemed fine at the bar, suddenly began deteriorating rapidly. They slurred their words, lost their coordination, and within minutes, both Sebastian and Luke collapsed onto the couch, passed out cold. Catherine stared at them in horror as the realization hit her. The frozen drinks, the ones the men had originally intended for her and Jackie, must have been spiked. When she switched them, the men had unknowingly consumed their own drugs. Jackie, intoxicated and confused, tried to wake them, but Catherine pulled her back, whispering, "I switched the drinks. I think they drugged themselves." The horror of the situation was suffocating. These men had invited them back, knowing the drugs would kick in. Why? Did they think their size would help them withstand it? Or was there someone else coming? The empty, staged apartment suddenly felt like a trap. Catherine grabbed Jackie and they ran out of the apartment, terrified of what would have happened if they had been the ones unconscious on that couch. This story involves a man named Jake who matched with a woman named Rachel on Bumble last spring. Her profile was completely unassuming. She looked like a cute, normal brunette who worked in marketing and liked hiking. She seemed down to earth, didn't push for anything weird, and they talked for about a week before agreeing to meet for dinner on a Wednesday night. Jake arrived at the restaurant and texted her that he had parked, but she didn't reply. He waited at the entrance for 20 minutes, feeling increasingly embarrassed. When he checked with the hostess, she told him no one named Rachel had a reservation. After waiting 30 minutes, just as he was about to leave, a man walked in. He was in his mid-40s, scruffy, heavy-set, and wearing a black hoodie. He walked straight up to Jake and asked, "Are you Jake?" Jake was caught off guard. The man claimed to be Rachel's brother. He said Rachel wasn't feeling well but didn't want to cancel, so she asked him to pick Jake up and drive him to their place nearby. He insisted that driving was better because the sidewalks were icy. Jake's gut twisted. The man's tone was calm, but the situation felt wrong. Jake refused the ride and asked for the address so he could go himself. The brother stepped in front of him, blocking his path to the door. He insisted Rachel would be upset if he didn't drive him. He stared at Jake with a look that felt less like an invitation and more like a threat. Jake firmly said he would text her later and stepped around him. As he hurried to his car and locked the doors, he saw the man standing outside the restaurant, watching him leave. Later that night, Jake received a message from Rachel on Bumble. "Why didn't you come?" Jake replied, "Your brother came to get me because you were sick." She responded instantly, "I don't have a brother." Jake froze. He explained what happened, and she stopped responding. That night, someone tried to hack into his email, bank app, and Instagram. The next morning, Rachel's profile was deleted. Then texts from unknown numbers started arriving. "You should have come with me. You made it harder for yourself." One message used his full legal name. That night, someone knocked heavily on his apartment door. When he checked the peephole, no one was there, but he heard heavy footsteps retreating down the hall. The terrifying climax occurred a week later when Jake took out his trash. Under the handle of the dumpster, he found a folded piece of paper. Inside was a printed photo of him standing in the restaurant lobby from the night of the date, taken from outside the window. On the back, it simply said, "You." The man hadn't just been a random creep. He had created a fake profile to lure Jake there, watched him wait, and then tried to get him into a vehicle. This story is a psychological horror about how a simple hookup can destroy your life. It started a few weeks after the narrator broke up with his unstable ex-girlfriend, Devon. He went to a party hosted by a wealthy friend and ran into one of Devon's friends, a girl named Taylor. Taylor came on to him aggressively, and after a few drinks, they hooked up in an upstairs bedroom. As he was leaving the room, he realized his wallet was gone. Taylor had vanished. He went home, hungover, and remembered he had an Apple AirTag in his wallet. The next morning, the Find My app showed the wallet at a local gym. He drove there to confront Taylor, but the moment he stepped out of his car, the AirTag went offline. He searched the gym, but saw no one he recognized. This became a sickening pattern. The next day, the AirTag appeared at a park. He drove there, and again, the moment he arrived, the signal died. He realized someone was watching him, waiting for him to show up, and then disabling the tracker. Weeks later, he was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. Someone had thrown a brick through his window. He locked his bedroom door and called 911 while listening to someone tear through his house downstairs. By the time police arrived, his laptop and electronics were stolen. A few weeks later, the AirTag pinged at a bar. Desperate, he went. The signal died again. He lost his cool, accusing random people in line of stealing his wallet, and got kicked out by a bouncer. He felt like he was losing his mind. Then came the knock at his door that nearly ended his life. It was the police with an arrest warrant for him. He was being charged with stalking. They had a search warrant. They went straight to his dresser and found a journal he had never seen before. It was filled with handwriting that wasn't his, detailing a psychotic obsession with his ex, Devon,
outlining daily schedules and sick things he wanted to do to her. He was arrested. It turned out Devon had been building a case against him for months. She had photos of him at the gym, the park, and the bar, all the places the AirTag had lured him to. She claimed he was stalking her at those locations. She had used his stolen laptop, which she knew the password to send threatening messages to herself, then deleted them to frame him. He was facing jail time and a registration as a sex offender. His lawyer told him to plead guilty because the evidence was overwhelming. He was saved by a miracle. The guy Devon was currently sleeping with developed a conscience. He confessed to the police that Devon had given him the AirTag, which she got from Taylor, and instructed him to lure the narrator to locations, disable the tag, and take photos of him looking for it. Devon had used a copy of his house key to plant the fake journal and stage the break-in. It was a calculated, terrifying setup initiated by a single encounter at a party.